Yes, I am 102, and I'm often asked if I have a secret for my longevity. No, I don't. But I do count my blessings that I can lead an active life with good health and a lively brain. How do I do this? Looking back, as well as looking forward, I find 4 points of a balanced life is important to me. First, physical. Never stop moving. In my youth and middle age, physical values took on high priorities: bicycling, swimming, golf, skiing. But as middle age progressed to being a senior citizen, I found that it takes more discipline, more time, more determination just to maintain my body. I can't do many things I used to do, but I do the best I can with what I've got. I go to the gym, play golf, swim. People say, aren't you lucky that you like to exercise? Who said I like to? I do it because I want this quality of life. Second is mental. An open mind. Mental activities come in many forms. To me, this means keeping my mind sharp, open to new ideas, and adapting to new ways of learning. Exercising my brain as well as my body. Listen seriously. Ask questions. Stimulating discussions. Search for the truth. Always with an open mind. I find mental stimulation as I continue to teach, to do research, and to write. Yes, my next book comes out next year. I'm in 2 book clubs and on 2 boards, always searching for ways to help others. Indeed, it is lifelong learning. And the third one I go on is emotional, and that's a positive attitude. That's love, trust, and all those good emotions. But for me, it's also forgiveness and hope, as well as accepting disappointments and even losses. But most important to me is attitude. How one looks at a problem, a tragedy, a rejection, a loss. We have choices. I've chosen to have a positive attitude, electing to not only accept my losses and tragedy events, but to learn from them. And the fourth one is spiritual. Help one another. I was brought up a Protestant Christian, and I do have a strong faith. But I learned to be respectful to those of other religions. For true religion is the life we live, not the creed we profess. And I try to live the highest moral standards, as I know you all do too. Thank you for being with me on our literacy team.
Oh, okay. All right, we do have some more questions for you. I'll just start from the top. Can you talk about a tough time that you went through personally, such as when Bob passed, and how you got through it?
Bob and I were married 73 years. It was a happy one. And the longer you're together, the harder it is to be separate. 73 years together. I miss him terribly, and it was difficult. I thought we were prepared for it, but when it hits you, it's hard, and it doesn't come. That's why I think it's so important to have a positive attitude. Instead of feeling sad and lonely, what I've chosen to do is to feel single and have my privacy and to be able to be alone when I want to be. But the most important thing is how you look at it. And I've chosen to say, I count my blessings. Count your blessings that you've had someone that long. And then you have to make the decisions of how you're going to do it. And this is why I've shared with you my 4 balances, because you have to go on physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then life can be very positive, which I've made it so.
All right, thanks, Ruth. Another question is, can you tell us what countries you have been to?
Which countries I've been to?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, been to 62 countries. I can't name them all.
Probably not name them all.
I've worked in 26 developing countries. People do ask which is the best one I've ever been to. Well, it's usually the last one I've been to or the next one I would go to. But to me, it's not the geography, it's not what is there, it's the people that make the difference. And there again, I've been the minority in many of these countries, so I know what it's like to be a minority, and that's one way I've learned to help other people of other races, other religions, because I know what it's like when you're a minority.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Of all the amazing things you have done in your life, where does starting LVA stand? And how do you think literacy as an issue and as a skill has influenced your life overall?
First of all, I've asked time and again, how in the world did I start a national literacy organization when I wasn't even a teacher? Well, you know, it's amazing. God works in mysterious ways, preparing us over our lifetime for events that will be happening later on. My family is very important to me. My faith is important to me. Literacy is very important to me and has changed my life as well as through all of you people has changed many lives. Because I'm thankful for you taking on my vision, making it work. There are constant changes that we have to make, but you're doing it. And it's a team that we've got, and I thank you for being part of that team.
All right, you are 102 years young. What's next for you?
Well, who knows? I'm the oldest of 5, so I'm supposed to be the first one to go. Each of them were married, so there were 10 of us. All of these are gone, all the marriages, all my siblings are gone. I'm the only one who why. Someone says, I know why. Your work isn't done yet. So that's why I'm keeping working. But to keep working, you must keep an active mind. You have to keep physically going. And so by working on those things, I'm happy. I'm still teaching. And I'm very thankful for family and friends and for all of my literacy teammates, whether they're students, tutors, staff, board members, all of you. You're part of our team. Thank you.
All right, how did you celebrate your birthday?
Well, it happened to be on a Sunday, yesterday. So everybody have been wanting to celebrate with me. I do not have my family here. I have 2 children. My son is in Washington, D.C., my daughter in California. They both want me there, but I've chosen to stay here. So I did go to church, and I did go to a forum where we have good discussion groups. And then my golfing friend had invited me to have lunch with her a long time ago, and I kept the day open for her. But she called the last minute. She said, Ruth, we're changing it a bit. Because she said, I asked my sister, told her I was having lunch with you, and she said, well, I want to come too. But she said, she is of a family of 12. And she said, you can't ask one in the family to come, you've got to ask them all. So, we had lunch with 15 people. They've included me in their family. That's what I like, being included. Included in the family, included in literacy, and those of you who are teaching are including someone in your life and being included in their life. So inclusion is important to me.
Absolutely. Let's see. How many people do you think you have met in your lifetime?
Oh. Well, you know what is interesting? You meet them, because I'm 102 years old, I don't meet them anymore, but I meet their children and their grandchildren. And that's what's exciting, because it goes on and on and on. It's not just who you meet, it's how you make the relationship. And making the relationship, to me, is so important. Finding out what they do, and what their goals are, and what their interests are, so that you can have something in common.
Here's a good question. If you think back to the first year of your work in literacy, what were a few of the most important foundations? Start there.
In fact, when I first started, remember I just read the census of 1960. There were 11,055 functional letters in Syracuse. That wasn't for me. I was not a teacher, but I could not understand a life without reading. How could there be 11,000 people right here in Syracuse who couldn't read well enough to get along? Of course, we now know that's only the tip of the iceberg. There are over 60,000 here right now. I was amazed that nobody was doing anything about it. I had a coffee at my house and invited the leaders of the community to come, hoping someone would take charge. They were all shocked that nobody offered to do it except one woman, a woman at that time, and it was Church Women United, asked me to talk to her group. I talked to her group, they voted. Those were the women of 80 churches in Syracuse to sponsor it, but only if I would take charge. I thought if we could do it, maybe teach 10, 20 people in Syracuse, never dreaming that it would go across the country. Good thing I didn't know, because I probably would have stopped.
All right, Ruth, you look fabulous. Over the years, you have received many awards and accolades, yet you have remained humble and continue to think of others first. What is your secret?
I just count my blessings. I count my blessings. Remember, the honors aren't for me alone. The honors for what all of us are doing. And I just happen to be the person that started and happen to be the person that they give it to. But really, it's all of you. And I hope you can take pride in it as well. If you are changing one life, if you're a tutor, that makes a difference. You've made a new friend as well as changed a life. 2, your life has changed because you have done that. So I think you should take pride with me in all that we've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to keep going after I'm gone. You got to keep going.
How important do you think learning a secondary language is to teaching literacy to others?
How important?
How important do you think learning a secondary language is to teaching literacy to others? Sorry.
I don't know a second language. At first, I thought you had to learn the language to teach someone else. But that isn't possible. Most of my students, my present student from Sudan, she speaks 4 languages. I speak 1. But I've had to learn, instead of learning more languages myself, my job was to teach them English because that's the one that they wanted to learn. It would be difficult for them for teaching me a second language.
All right, this is a very good question. Can you tell everyone about the refrigerator of books?
Oh, well, I'm a very practical person, as you know, very practical. And when I started Literacy Volunteers, I had 2 children at home. My husband had his business. I had a very full life in all the things I was doing. I was a Girl Scout leader, all the things I did. And starting this, where am I going to put my books? Because we have no office. The office is down in my basement, in my family room down there. So I thought, well, the refrigerator is broken, so I'll pull the refrigerator out and put shelves there, and I can put the books there. My daughter comes down and she said, "Mom, that's wrong. The refrigerator already has shelves in it. You can use that." So that's what I did. I'm very practical, so now when people come to interview me years ago and even now, they say, "Is that still there?" It's still there. It's still filled with books.
That's a great use of a refrigerator. Was there ever a time you felt really discouraged about pressing on? If so, what were the circumstances and how did you overcome those feelings?
Many times I've been very discouraged. Remember, I've lived a long time, and I've lived in a man's world. And very often, they let me know that it wasn't important for me to do anything. I've been put down, I've been rejected, but I don't give up easily. I'm Swedish. My husband always said, "You're stubborn sweet," because I'm determined and I won't give up. So I think when things went wrong, I was very fortunate to have a husband who supported me all along. And the other thing is, I knew that reading was so important in anybody's life that I had to find new ways to do things, because some of the things I started, they didn't work. So instead of giving up, you have to keep searching. And that's where I went to Syracuse University. I wasn't even a teacher. I went to Syracuse, the head of them, and asked them to help me. And they did. Dr. Frank Green, who was head of the readings clinic there, he said, "Come on in. I want you to talk to all of my PhD in reading." I was scared to death, but I can take shorthand as fast as you talk. So I went in with my pad, and it was like the sky opening up. There again, I had to learn to make changes. I had to learn to adapt. And that's what I say. Throughout it all, we're still learning. We're still adapting. And this is why I'm proud of ProLiteracy and what we're doing.
Absolutely. Please tell us about some of your favorite students.
Oh. I've had so many wonderful people, and they've changed my life. One of my early students was Buster Smith. He was a black man who worked at the candle factory here, and he had never been to school. He signed his name with an X, and yet he worked in the maintenance department. And we were working hard to do what he was, to help him go along. But the first thing I would do, I would say, what do you want to read first of all? He said, "I want to read the signs and the plant." So he brought in, I said, "You copy them," because he couldn't read it all. He copied the signs, men and women. So I told him, and I said, how did you learn which one to go in? He said, "You watch and see who comes out." See, because you can't read doesn't mean you're dumb. It means you're very clever and able to do that. And then the next sign he brought in was danger explosives. So when I taught him to read danger explosive, he was amazed. He said, "That's on a big tank. I go behind that tank to smoke my cigarette." Well, when I told that, I was at a cocktail party, and I was talking to these men. One of the men was the president of the company he worked for. And when he heard that story, he was amazed. He said, "I never thought everybody has to learn to read, even my maintenance man."
Mm-hmm.
That man was also an assistant minister. Now, how could an assistant minister not be able to read? He invited me to his church, and I went there, and I was the only white person. Bob and I were there, and they were very welcoming to us. But I wasn't going to tell them that their assistant minister couldn't read. He walked up to the altar up in front, opened up the Bible, and everybody thought he was reading. He had memorized many of the parts of the stories. There again, leaders also need to learn to read, but leaders are people who can help.
Mm-hmm. Sound like an
I'm
incredible
working
man.
with someone from Sudan now, who's the mother of one of the lost boys. And there again, because she's a priest in the Episcopal Church in Dinga, and she's learning English. But I couldn't understand how she could. She must have gotten some education. How she could be this. She had never been to school. Women didn't go to school in Sudan, and how she's gradually learned. So I'm learning a lot as I go along.
Yeah, sounds like you have some incredible students. Let's see. In your earliest years of pioneering the literacy movement, what would you say were the 2 to 3 most formative steps you took to build the foundation for what today has become ProLiteracy?
I had no idea that my father died when he was only 38. And so they had planned for me to go to the University of Illinois. And, but my uncle, who was in charge of the estate by the time I graduated from high school, when we went to him to say, we're going to send her to go to the University of Illinois, he said, no, we're not going to give you the money. I'm saving it for the boys. So I could not go on to university. What do I do then? I went to this tiny junior college, and that's where I met my husband there. But instead of, when I finished my 2 years of that, I still wanted to go on to finish college. My uncle wouldn't let me. He said, the only thing I'm going to let you do is go to business college, something I did not want to do. I went to business college. I learned typing, shorthand, organization, law, all these things. Without those, I would not have been able to start literacy volunteers. So it's amazing. Things that are disaster in your early life sometimes are a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you enjoy most about teaching literacy?
As I'm teaching, I'm learning because every student needs a little bit more. So I'm doing that. But also it gives me an opportunity. I have not been to Sudan. To be with a person, I'm learning more about it all the time. So it's opening up a whole new area to me. I go and do more research on it, do more reading, and that's where my lifelong learning comes as I'm teaching, helping my students have lifelong learning, but I'm getting it as well.
All right, thank you. My questions are moving as I'm reading them. People are very interested. How do you think literacy needs are changing in today's world with all the new technology changes and such?
Changing a lot. Remember in the 1960s, we had nothing that we have now. I've had to learn. I now have an iPhone, I have an iPad, and I have 3 computers. There again, I've had to learn to do that. My students have an iPhone. 40 years ago, we didn't have that. So unless you can keep going, and 10 years from now, you'll be learning more. So onward. They laugh at my lifelong learning, but they'll find it. That's how it is throughout life.
Mm-hmm. This one's fun. You have traveled all around the world. What has made you choose to live in Syracuse, New York?
Well, I'm from Chicago, and my husband had his first job in Seattle, Washington, and then they sent him here to Syracuse, New York. I had never heard of Syracuse. I thought it was a suburb of New York City. But there again, we came here not knowing a soul. I find it's one of the best kept secrets in the world. It's a place where we have the outdoors, we have close enough so that you know most of the people around here. You have the changes of seasons, which we like. That's why I took up skiing and everything. Because of the people here. It's the people in the place that make the difference to us. And we did. And even because my children aren't here now, I've chosen to stay here because of the people. I have friends around the world.
Mm-hmm. What was it like receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom?
It was amazing. I got a phone call that was sent to me, and it said that it was the White House calling. And I was a little shocked. I mean, I thought they had the wrong number maybe. And so I asked them, they started right out saying, President Bush would like to present to you the Medal of Freedom. I first said, this is for freedom. I didn't know what it was. And they said, this is the highest award we can give to a civilian, and we'd like to give it to you. And I said, well, that's very nice. And we expect you to be at the White House on December 15th to receive it. Well, my children, that was my 90th birthday, it was the next day, the 16th. I was going to be in California. I said, oh, I was going to be in California. And they said, you may want to think about this. I was completely shocked. And so they told me to call back later. So I called my children and I said, I've got a problem. They said, what's your problem? I said, well, we planned on my coming to California for my birthday, but the White House wants me to come. They said, Mom, we'll change it. We'll all go to Washington. So we did. I was honored. I there again, who was being honored with me? There were 10 people being honored. 9 men, 1 woman. My granddaughter in California said, Grandma Ruth, I don't want you to wear black. Wear a color because you are going to be representing women, which I hadn't thought of before. But at that time, not many women. I was representing all of you. I was representing you. It wasn't just me. It was what we, as a group, were doing. I hope you take pride with me in that honor.
That's amazing. Can you talk about a learner or a tutor that impacted you with their story?
They all have stories, and so I encourage them to write their stories up as I'm writing stories up. I have them dictate it to me, and then I write it down, and then teach them their own way, because that's important. It's important for them to know that their lives are important too. And when they can send it down, I tell them, just as my children and my grandchildren will want to hear about my stories early, their children and their grandchildren will want to hear about their stories.
All right. How often do you golf?
Oh, as long as the weather is good. I've been golfing for 60 years now, but now I golf only 9 holes. But I golf three times a week, and I go out and practice too. But now the weather is bad. What do? I practice putting at home, and the reason for that is I can get a handicap for the number of shots. I have a shorter ball. I'll go on a higher handicap. But when I get near the green, I can compete with them pretty much. So I keep practicing my putting.
Very nice. I don't think I could do that. I'm not a golfer.
Well, I have a little, there again, I wrote a little, I want to share what I've learned. I've made many mistakes. I've learned. And I wrote a little book for ladies as new golfers. And ProLiteracy has it. And we can give it to you for free. So any new golfers want it, know that ProLiteracy will have it to give it to you.
It's right there on the shelf behind you, actually. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. All right. What was your meeting with Barbra Bush like? Or what was it like meeting Barbra Bush?
That was another surprise. I was in Washington, D.C. at the time visiting my son when evidently Literacy Volunteers of America got a call from her saying that they wanted me to come to her house for a tea. So they called me and said, Mrs. Bush would like you to come to the observatory for a tea. Well, I was shocked and amazed because who am I to go to it was at the Vice President's time. Who am I to go to the Vice President's wife? But my son brought me there, and we went, we drove up, but there were no other cars there. I thought, oh darn, I'm the first one there. But he left, and I knocked on the door, and the butler came to the door, and the butler said, I said, I'm Mrs. Colvin. They said, Mrs. Colvin, come in. Mrs. Bush will be down shortly. She comes down, and I find the tea is for me alone. she was interested in literacy. And she evidently was asking different, I'm sure she asked other people too, but she wanted to know about literacy, what I was doing, why it was important, and that helped her make the decision to go into literacy. Well, after an hour and a half of talking, I said, it's time for me to go. Can we make a call for a taxi to come home? And so she said to the butler, hey, we had a call. And I said, I'll go out and wait. I thank you very much. She said, no, I'll go out with you. She goes out with her. That's the kind of a person she is. She is so easy to be with. Of course, then she wrote the introduction to several of my books. She spoke at our conferences, and I was honored to be introduced her.
Mm-hmm.
We kept up correspondence since. I was honored.
That's wonderful. How supportive was your husband?
Without Bob, they give me all the credit, and that's not true. In fact, even on our international trips, he was invited before I was. He was invited he sold industrial chemicals, and he was a top salesman here in the United States for many years. So the International Executive Service Corps invited him to come to Turkey, to Ecuador. Ecuador was our first one, for 3 months to show his way of selling and his knowledge and all. And of course I was invited with him. But I don't just go and shop. When I go there, I want to find out what they're doing in literacy, or if they need literacy, or if the evening need anything, so I'm going too. So we went first to Ecuador and then to Turkey, and the same thing I did with Turkey. And as we gained along, then I was invited, by USAID and Methodists and all the people that invited me, different people. But Bob stood with me the whole time. I could not have done it without him.
You seem like an amazing teammate. So what was the most challenging situation you had when teaching someone to read?
What was the what?
What was the most challenging situation you had when teaching someone to read?
When they have a learning disability. In fact, recently I had another student, I've had several, there again, an unmet need. So what I did, I knew I didn't feel adequate because I had all my methods, we had everything going along. So what I just did, I did some research on learning disabilities. And then I decided to try to see who would be the best one, because we're now a national program. This was when I was doing my 8th edition of a tutor. I needed somebody that was the specialist in the field, and I found one of the top people was right here at Syracuse University, Dr. Corinne Smith. I didn't know her, she didn't know me. I did my research. Then I called her and said, would you be willing, I told her who I was, she had heard about me. And I said, would you be willing to look at my research and help me on this? And she said, no, that's not the way to do it. First of all, I want to know your philosophy. So I said, okay. So the office sent her the 7th edition of Tutor. 2 weeks later, she called and she said, you're right on top of everything. You're doing it the right way at all. I would be glad to work with you. Come on in. So I wrote my research in, talking to her. She was marvelous. She could speak, and I had to simplify what she was saying and ask questions. And there again, we put it in Tutor 8, her whole chapter. I couldn't get it. I asked her to be on the local board, which she was, and we became personal friends. Now see, this is what happens. A door opens up, go in, and you do the best you can, and you come out. We got the best person to do it, and I had a new friend.
Mm-hmm. All right. What made you write I Speak English?
When did I do it? Oh,
What?
that was interesting. Remember, at the beginning, it was only we decided that only if you spoke English and couldn't read and write, those are the ones. We couldn't solve all the problems in the world. So what they did was, if you couldn't speak English, you had to go to somebody else. Well, that was in the 60s and even in this, about 1970. Well, by that time, immigrants were starting to come in, but they said, Ruth, we can't do everything. You're pushing our mission too much. The board said, my board said. Of course, I have to do what my board says too. But I'm also a volunteer. I can do what I want to do. So what I did, I started taking all the English second language courses I could take. I would go all over. For 2 years, I did research, finding out. Well, by the end of 2 years, even my board members finally were saying, we're getting immigrants who also need reading and writing, and they might need English. By that time, I had my research done. Francis Singer was on our board, who was owner of Singer Publishing Company. He published the book. So sometimes you just go ahead and try. Don't give up.
Absolutely.
See, I didn't, even though my board, and they were right. We couldn't solve all the problems, but there again, you have to adapt. And when the immigrants were coming, our problems changed a little bit. Now, half of our students are English second language students.
Okay. How do you balance tutoring adults and the administrative work?
Students,
How do you balance tutoring adults and the administrative work that you do?
well, I don't do as much administrative work. This is where ProLiteracy.
Mm-hmm.
This is where, thank heavens I have a board. Thank heavens I have this wonderful staff, because they take care of that, which is wonderful. And it has to go on. It can never depend on one person. Even at the beginning, recently I lunched with Marianne Robinson. She was the first person we paid at all, because at first everything was volunteer. We finally realized we had to have somebody with part-time payment, and that was the beginning of it. And then it had more and more staff, board. Without them, it would be impossible. Impossible. They take care of that for me.
All right. Have you heard of additional types of literacy available now, like financial literacy, with how to use money, religious literacy, how to understand different religions, and digital literacy with how to use a computer? What do you think of these new types of literacy?
Absolutely. In fact, there is no end to what it is. First of all, I've had students, in fact, one of my students couldn't count. And so how could he shop for money without saving it all? They didn't know this. So financial literacy is very important. One of my students told me he had a very nice house, that he couldn't read or write or couldn't do anything, he had a very low job. I was wondering how he did it. His wife was in an accident and was killed, and he got the insurance money. He couldn't count money or anything. He had all the cash from that. And that's how he bought the house, with the cash. And he wanted to know, there again, the difference in money. We take it for granted that everybody knows that, and I did it didn't. The same thing with religions. Why am I a Protestant Christian? Because I was brought up a Christian. If I were born a Catholic, I'd be a good Catholic. If I were brought up a Muslim, I'd be a good Muslim. If I was brought up a Jew, I'd be a good Jew. Mm-hmm. If so much is by that, I'm looking not for the differences, for the similarities, because there is similarities with all.
All right. I have a question going back to one earlier that we talked about, the challenges, one of your major challenges with teaching. They just want to know what the name of the book was called that you were referring to when you were talking about the chapter on disability.
Tutor 8, the 8th edition.
Okay.
Yeah, Tutor 8th edition.
And do you still tutor?
Yes, I do. See, that's the important part of it, to keep going constantly. As I say, I'm teaching a Sudanese lady right now, and it's amazing. I thought I knew all about the Lost Boys. I had met some of the Lost Boys, and when I met his son, her son is Abraham here, you forget. They had a mother, they had a father. The father was gone. What happened to her? Goes on and on. Part of my learning is through my students. It opens another door all the time.
Right? What advice do you give someone who wants to get involved in literacy?
I see so many people. In fact, one of my friends, my golfing friends, there again, she said she was interested in working on my 100th birthday project, and I was very thankful for that because that was a moneymaker for the local organization here. But after she did that, she said, Ruth, really what I want to do is I want to learn. I would like to teach, but I don't know how to teach. I said, that's what we do. People want to know more, and I think that's why it's so important, you tutors, because you are our ambassadors. You are the ones that talking about your students get other people interested in it. And they say, well, if Ruth can do it, I can do it. If your friend can do it, you can do it. And they see the interesting stories that you have about your student. And younger and older people are willing to try. But as I say, by telling your stories, that's the way to do it, I think. I'm going to always keep teaching as long as I can. In fact, the owner of Drumlins here was a friend of mine who, Edna Burlingame, her name was, who decided that she would like to take the training, but she says, I go to Florida in the wintertime, so I'm not here long. But at that time, we let them take the training anyhow. So she took the training, and then she said, well, I'll just try one. So they gave her one, and it was an African American with a big hairdo and a big earrings, and rode up on a motorcycle. And she had never worked with any black people at all. I thought, oh no, they got the wrong one for her. But she taught him, and she started to get her, and she said, it's amazing. He is a wonderful man. He couldn't read, and yet what he's doing, and she's bragging about him. And she said he had never met a white woman. And he said with her, he said, who's paying you to teach me? She says, oh no, nobody pays me. You mean you're doing it for free? Why? She says, well, I just want to help you. It changed his mind about white people. It changed her mind about black people. Well, then she went in Florida, and she was the one that helped start the one down in Florida, all of them down there. And then she was in a nursing home. You know what she was doing all the while? Teaching people while she was in the nursing home in the maintenance room. So it changes everybody's lives. I have stories all the time. This is why it's been a fascinating experience for me.
Oh, I bet. Do you think solving the literacy problem would help solve poverty?
Yes, I think it would be one of the biggest helps that we have, that people can do it. We've got to start. In fact, when I got an award from Barbra Bush, and she's a librarian who works with the children, children's literacy. And so when I was saying with her, she was saying how important it is to start from the beginning. Children who can't read, because when you get children 10, 12 years old who can't read, then you're going to have adults later on. So So I praised her for her work with her children. But I said it isn't either or. Who's the child's first teacher? The mother. Unless you work talking with the child, the first 3 or 4 years you've lost that. So it isn't either children's or adults. It's family literacy. It has to go on. And that's the only way you're going to have your children take care of themselves, unless they do. And if a child can't, if a mother can't, father can't read, the child is going to be behind in school. So I think it's important.
Yep, very important. So we have about 3 questions left, and that's pretty much what we have time for. So I'm just going to finish up with these 3 questions, and then maybe a note to the audience to wrap it up. So what led to the merge of Laubach with Literacy Volunteers of America? What did you learn from this experience?
What did I learn from?
The
The merger of Laubach.
Yeah.
I knew Frank Laubach, and I admired him tremendously because he was a missionary, and he did the best that he could with the methods he did. And when Laubach was here, they were using a phonetic message only, and I was using a professionally accepted one. But the donors were saying, why don't you get together? So we finally worked out to say that we both would adapt to each other because our purpose was the same. We wanted to adapt, and as I say, it's lifelong adapting, lifelong learning, and this is what we're doing in ProLiteracy. We're, even now with your technical things, we're changing and learning.
Did you write a book with your tutoring stories and experiences in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wrote Away with Words, which told the beginning and the many stories of students. And that's what it's all about. It's all about, and that's available to anybody that wants to get it through ProLiteracy. And then my book, Off the Beaten Path, is the story of the 9 countries with the 93 people. And I was going to write more because that's only 9 countries. I've been in 26. I've got a lot of stories. But I've been encouraged to write a memoir, and I did not want to do that. But they said, people want to know, why are you the person you are? How did you become interested in racism? How did you become interested in literacy when you weren't a teacher? How did you become interested in different religions? I said, I don't know. He said, things in your early life prepared you for this. I said, no, that's not true. It is true. I have found. So this is now a story of my life and how it has affected everything else. But it includes 20 countries and about 30 stories of my experiences in other countries, because they also want to know what did these experiences in other countries have an effect on you, and they did have an effect on me. I learned a lot, and so there are international stories as well.
So this memoir has been started, or
Pardon?
has the memoir been started, or are you not?
Oh, the book is about done.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it'll be probably out next year.
Very exciting. All right, we are on our last question. I think. Yep. So, when training tutors, what should you keep in mind?
And I'm
Training
training
tutors.
tutors.
What should you keep in mind?
First thing I do is I thank them because they are sharing something. I can't afford them. You're beyond what I've got. You're giving of yourself to someone. And I said how important it is. I want them to know that because I think that's the most important thing. And it's lifelong learning. We'll teach you what to do, but you will also learn on the other way. And I let them know. I tell them stories of friends that I've made in students, and there again, stories that they will make in friends. But also they'll learn about other countries, they'll learn about other situations, just as I did. People that worked in, early on, that worked in the cotton fields here. I mean, we read stories of it. When you read, when you're with someone that has gone through that, it changes your life too. So my life, I think telling stories, I'm a storyteller, as you can see.
Yeah. So this is the end of the presentation. I don't know if you have maybe an inspirational message you want to share with everybody, and we'll just wrap it up.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate so much that men, women, of all ages have supported us, of all religions, of all races, have come together. And the more we can get together, the more peace we'll have in the world. And I think literacy volunteers and ProLiteracy is the basis for peace, because we are working together to share each other's needs. And I thank everybody.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I think that's it. So,
Thank you.
thank you.